I salute President Hans van Baalen for his very strong leadership, and thank Nowoczesna and Richard Petru for their hospitality in Warsaw. Dear colleagues, it is in the midst of challenge that liberalism thrives. It is when pushed from left and right that liberal values punch back. This is a lesson that we have inherited from our liberal founders, those who gathered in 1947 to issue the Oxford Liberal Manifesto and created Liberal International that I preside, and those who 40 years ago gave rise to the European liberal family that we celebrate in this 37th ALDE Party Congress. See, populists and fascists dominated the discourse of the 1920s and the 1930s and created inhuman societies where individuality was crushed and whole groups of people were denigrated and exterminated. These populists accused democracies of being weak at the price of immense sacrifice. World War II proved them very wrong. When a new totalitarian menace was being enshrined beyond the Iron Curtain, when a wall was built in Berlin in the 1960s, liberals did not flinch. The ultimate collapse of the Soviet Union, to which Poland, our host country today, is not alien, liberated nations north and south from the corruption of the single-party, and multi-party democracies became the norm. But this is not the 1990s anymore. Well into the 21st century, authoritarianish electoral democracies want to impose a new patron de couture onto the world. Yes, people vote, more or less freely, but the options are more restricted and the freedoms that accompany liberal democracy are eroded. The attempts to undermine the role of the courts here in Poland are testimony to this. Orban's espousal of what he terms illiberal democracy is testimony to this. Venezuelan chaos and lack of judicial independence is testimony of this. Attacks on journalists, verbal and physical, in the four corners of the world are testimony to this. Cultural and economic models of democratic exclusion of the type democracy, human rights are alien to our culture, or development can only happen with a strong authoritarian hand at the helm are both testimony to this. Anti-liberalism is the culmination of greed. Political greed to concentrate power in the hands of the few, economic greed to enrich the few at the expense of the many. We liberals are not a zero-sum game operation. We are a positive-sum game win-win philosophy. Liberal values are freedom infused with liberality, equality of opportunity, concern for the stewardship of society and of the planet, and the legacy we leave to future generations. Too many of our enemies, in order to obfuscate our message of progress, create confusion by coining terms at the opposite of what we are. Neoliberal is one of those. There is nothing liberal in the word neoliberal. We liberals embrace progress and diversity. We do not fear the future. We are not afraid of liberty for all in all societies. We believe in health and education as common goods, in economic and political rules of the game that make the game accessible to all. We do not judge. We want to live in peace and create societies of solidarity in our nations and across nations. Colleagues, we are ready to fight, like we did 40 years ago or 70 years ago, for the secular and progressive values of liberalism. I observe that conservatives and socialists too often give in to the mermaid chants of populism. It is up to us, liberals, to roll our sleeves and fight relentlessly in Europe and beyond for our freedoms and liberal democracy and the future of our planet, gravely endangered by climate change and the blindness of greed. At Liberal International, the World Federation of Liberal Parties, liberal and democratic parties, we are writing now the Liberal Manifesto for the 21st century. Over the past year and a half, we have gathered at Oxford, Zurich, Mexico, Potsdam, Taipei, the United Nations in New York, where we have been very active, more recently in Bangkok, Bolivia's Santa Cruz de la Sierra, and Marrakesh for COP22. We were the only international present inside the workings of COP22. And in a continuously participatory process, under the auspices of a robust drafting committee with Karl-Heinz Paquet, we have put together our strong liberal response to the challenges of this century. ALDE, Mr. President, will become, at our next LI Congress in Andorra, my home country, heir to a culture of uninterrupted peace since 1278 and with a parliament since 1490, ALDE will become a full-fledged member of Liberal International. We already approved it in Marrakesh by acclamation. I invite you all to take up the liberal fight and contribute through your respective parties to the final drafting of the manifesto. I also invite you to come, many, to the highest capital in Europe, among my childhood Pyrenees mountains from the 18th to the 21st of May for the 70th anniversary of Liberal International. Colleagues, this morning we all woke up to the good news that the UK Liberal Democrats were victorious in Richmond on a platform against Brexit. Congratulations. Much has been said about the American election, but a majority of the American people, by over 2.5 million people, voted for the Democratic candidate. In Canada, we have a strong, self-assured Liberal Party, embracing internationalism and free trade. In Taiwan, we won the presidency in a landslide. In Germany, we are in a very good position to be back in Parliament. In Côte d'Ivoire, Liberals have turned a war-ravaged country into a thriving economy. LIMEC and IFLRI, our youth organizations, have millions in membership. These are just a few examples of what we can do. The future is not so assuredly in the hands of populists. No matter how loud they shout, dear colleagues, the future is ours. I believe that very much. Thank you.